And so in the meantime, legal advisors are sending interpretations to us so that we can work around. Lawmakers are making laws that are enforceable under this because we still have a responsibility not to criminalize homelessness, but to ensure equal access to public places. So people still have the right to use the parks for recreation, what they were intended for. And so we have to be able to keep the trails clean and the picnic areas clear of encampments so that they can still be used for birthday parties and right. whatever else. And so the lawmakers are doing that. Legal interpretations are helping us navigate Boise, but we had a problem. And so you and I are detectives at the same time during, I think, the bulk of that.
2017, 18, around there was, I got a tail end. I was a corporal on patrol before going into the detectives in 2017. And I'd made some projects out of some areas that were really being abused. You mentioned campers and trailers. We had a whole city block of a dead-end street that was from the street where it was lined with derelict cars and RVs, and the adjoining right-of-ways up to the private property owners was just encampment and just filth that had accumulated. And we have some laws against this, that this isn't about criminalizing homelessness. This is about having order in the city streets and making them clean for use, not a cesspool, not an RV with their black and gray water tank just free flowing.
Yeah. And so you went into detectives. Patrol officers are dealing with navigating these ambiguous laws. We have encampments sprouting up for several city blocks. And when I came out of detectives in spring of 2019, back to patrol, it was like peak. We had in a couple of our major, like, crown jewel city parks, we had huge unsanitary encampments that were causing tons of public outcry.
Yeah, that time was definitely when the parks received the brunt of it, because as we're also interpreting the Boise ruling, other non-governmental organizations are providing advice to people of pinpointing, here's where you can go to camp. It's got to be on public property.
Yeah.
And so we're hearing the public property has to be open for this, and people are being told that, and it just the tsunami hit, perfect storm of the parks carrying the brunt of it, because we are a city with a lot of very nice parks, very nice open green areas that are flat and they have tree cover. If you were going to pick a campsite out in the woods, you would pick our parks. Right. They're beautiful.
Meanwhile, we have well-meaning service organizations advertising their services through whatever means, whatever channels they advertise. We are still seeing immigration to our community from other communities. Right. And we're being told, we heard you had this service or that service, or we had this service organization would help us with dental care or medical care or housing or whatever. It's being advertised. And so we were seeing people actually travel a long distance in response to advertisements they were seeing from our well-meaning service organizations.
We'd start to see consistent, like people bought in bulk tents to hand out.
Yeah.
We come across people that they couldn't tell you what state they last had an ID, and they've just been living the nomadic life, and they have the same tent and sleeping bag as a guy who's been that I've known here for his whole life.
Yeah.
Like, how did this happen? Well, they got connected somewhere with some of these resources to continue to live outdoors.
So actually, that reminds me, before the big commercial property that we were talking about earlier with the really elaborate, there was a fire there not long after it was cleared out, if you remember.
Right. Oh, yeah. There was two fires, but one was a
couple dozen acres burned.
Yeah.
Started from a homeless encampment fire. And after that, there were far fewer, but there were still some. And if you recall, we had a homicide in the property that we referred to as the Hatchet Homicide.
Oh, yeah.
And so Hatchet Homicide was my case, and the suspect is arrested pretty quickly, the probable suspect, based on a witness who saw the crime. And I'm sitting, in the interview room just like this, and I'm just having a conversation. We're getting ready to get into, so what happened today? And part of that is rapport building, right? You just don't start a conversation with, so you had a hatchet, take it from there. Right? You got to like, take me to the beginning. Where are you from?
Yeah.
And so he tells me that he and his girlfriend are from Florida. And somehow I knew that they were not hitchhikers, but like street kids. They were in their 20s. Travelers. And so I already knew that. So, you're from Florida. So what brings you up here? He goes, well, my girlfriend and I are down in Florida and we're doing whatever down there. And she has some dental problems. She's got bad teeth. I said, okay. He goes, and we're looking for what available services there are. And we heard that y'all had good, free dental care. I said, all the way in Florida, you heard that Washington State had like free dental care or good dental care? He goes, no, Longview. I said, what? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, we got a flyer through one of their service organizations that's like, send us your needy and homeless, and we have services available. We want to help you. And so he and she get connected with this organization, and they hitchhike and take buses, and they weren't without means. They had some money. And so they worked their way up here over the course of just a couple days. And they're in this camp, this area of encampment, which was down by a Walmart. And while they're at Walmart for supplies, within a couple of days of getting to town, they meet the victim, the will-be victim of the homicide, and the girlfriend takes a liking to him. And after all this, traveling across the country, coast to coast,
oh no,
they're hanging out in a van driven by a guy named Coyote. Mm-hmm. So they're hanging out in Coyote's van at the Walmart, and after a little while, this homicide suspect gets suspicious that something might be up. And by a little while, I mean, they're in the van for a few hours, but he's like, there's chemistry here. Something's going on. And so he, at some point, is like, we best get going back to camp. And she goes, I think I'm just going to hang with these guys. And she had taken a liking to the will-be victim. Mm-hmm. And so he says, I'll help you get your stuff. I'll walk with you guys to camp. And so the girlfriend, the suspect, and the victim walk back to their camp. They're in the field adjacent to the Walmart. And while she's packing her stuff, she's Winnie the Pooh in the hole, like in the tent, just packing her things. The will-be victim, and he the suspect tells me this later, he says, I'm standing there, and you know what he says to me? He says, don't worry, bro. I had a girl do this to me one time too. And turns out he was standing there. He had been chopping firewood, just kind of fidgeting or whatever, but he's holding his hatchet when the guy says that. And that was it. He had enough. And he hatcheted him to death. So anyways, the point of that rabbit trail was these folks were brought here by the promise of resources, which were provided. And so that's kind of the double-edged sword of living in a community that has ample resources, is it pulls, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, I remember seeing those flyers and Facebook posts that were, advertising the services that you can get here.